Welcome back, my party people. Okay, today we are going to talk about the nervous system. But mainly we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system, mainly the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system, like many of you know, fight or flight. Parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So we do the nervous system, it's split up into two, right? We have the central nervous system, and then we have the autonomic nervous system, or before we have the autonomic, we have the peripheral nervous system, and then we have the autonomic and somatic. Sorry about that. And then somatics and motor sensory, and this is the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, right? So that's just kind of a nice chart. Central nervous systems, right? Brain, spinal cord. So now I'm going to explain a little bit of anatomy. I know that's kind of fast, but that's just like a kind of a basis of things. So anatomy, I'm sorry to any artist or anatomist out there, but this is not going to be amazing. We have the spine, cord, whatever. Then we have the chain ganglia. And then I'm going to draw right here. This is the collateral ganglia. Hear me out, okay? So right here we have the T6 and the T7 in the thoracic region. And I'm going to just draw a dotted line. So anything above the T6 will innervate organs above the diaphragm. So kind of think about a diaphragm, right? And so the nerve that goes there will go here, innervate organs above the diaphragm. Boom. And then we'll have another nerve. It'll go from a T7 area, go from the collateral ganglia, it can go to wherever. And then we have another type. It'll go from T7, and then it'll go to this thing above the kidney called adrenal medulla. And that will synapse and go wherever. So that's another thing. So again, I'm just glazing over these things so that when I explain the next thing, you'll know what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm on, but I got class pretty soon. So with the S and S and the P, with the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, we have a couple things. So I'm just going to draw the neuron like this, right? So I drew the neuron in an earlier video. I drew like myelinated sheaths and things. This is myelinated sheath. This is unmyelinated, right? That's why it's solid dotted. And then we have target tissue. We know nerves go to tissue and things. So this is the sympathetic nervous system. This is how the neurons are split up in the sympathetic nervous system. Now, there are different types of neurons within the sympathetic nervous system, right? When I explain that whole map with the adrenal medulla and things. But I'm going to explain the generalized one, and then I'll explain the special types. So we have here on this synapse, we have a thing called N2. This is a nicotinic receptor. Nicotinic receptors are very important because they bind to acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. Remember in my last video, I just kind of wrote NE or NT, I think. I was like, neurotransmitter, you'll learn about it. That's a neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. Weird crap. Acetylcholine. I'll probably just acetylcholine. Then, with the sympathetic nervous system, we have another neurotransmitter, right? So, acetylcholine gets released, binds to the nicotinic receptor N2. This helps mainly sodium, potassium ions, channels open, they flood in the cell, and action potential is released, depolarization happens, boom. Action potential goes all the way down, and this one, it's a different neurotransmitter. That's why I do it a different color. This one's called norepinephrine. So I'm going to put an A here for acetylcholine and an NE for norepinephrine. And and then it goes to the target tissue. The target tissue with the sympathetic nervous system has a myriad of different receptors here on the target tissue, right? So we have alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. And that's on the target tissue, right? And so the sympathetic nervous system, we have like the heart, we have the smooth muscle, and we have glands, like sweat glands and things. Now, let's explain the parasympathetic nervous system before I explain the special types of sympathetic nervous. But we'll do parasympathetic nervous system, that's why it's PNS, SNS. You might notice that I drew these a little different, and that is a little purpose. This probably should be a little bit more over here, but anyway, we have the myelinated part of the parasympathetic nervous system synapses more closely to the target tissue than the sympathetic nervous system. Again, it kind of has the same mechanism of action. We have the N2 right here, and we also have, you guessed it, acetylcholine. But instead of norepinephrine, we also have acetylcholine get released. So the same thing happens with the nicotinic receptor. The acetylcholine hits the nicotinic receptor, opens the sodium and potassium channels. Sodium and they flood into the cell, depolarize the cell, action potentials get shot through the unmyelinated part of the neuron, releases acetylcholine again. And so now with the PNS, we have different types of receptors, and these are muscarinic receptors. M1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm just going to pause right here. We have nicotinic receptor, alpha 1 and 2, beta 1, 2, and 3 receptors, muscarinic 1 through 5 receptors. And then we'll have SNS special. This is like what I can like to call it. There's two that I'm going to talk about. So again, this one's the same as before. I'm going to try to draw it as even as possible. Except because you're like, well, that kind of looks the same. It's not. This one will actually have acetylcholine release here and here, kind of like the peripheral nervous system. But the difference is that even though right here still uses N2, right here does not use muscarinic, or I guess it does use muscarinic receptors, but it doesn't use them in the same way. It only uses muscarinic 1. That's why I kind of drew it in green, split it up. And this is like a generalized sweat gland. Just sweating is more of a sympathetic nervous system thing than a parasympathetic nervous system thing. And then we have another one. Again, remember that anatomy drawing I drew earlier. This one goes all the way to the adrenal medulla. We call it an adrenal med. And the adrenal medulla, just like these synapses, has a nicotinic 2 receptor. And just like these synapses, it has an acetylcholine release. Right, so again, we have all these very important pathways. And now I'm going to explain what alpha 1 and beta 1 and stuff like that too. So, I don't even know if I'll have to erase this, but we're going to think about right now cholinergic receptors. Cholinergic receptors. I guess I could write that down. Cholinergic receptors, right? So these cholinergic receptors are nicotinic muscarinic receptors. So remember nicotinic, the N2 that I wrote up there, helps sodium and potassium come in. Positive charges, depolarization, action potential goes out, and then helps the other synapse do either norepinephrine or acetylcholine, like I explained. Muscarinic have the target organs of the parasympathetic nervous system, and then that one M1 receptor with the sympathetic nervous system with generalized sweat glands. So yeah, again, so the function of these glands, though, with the muscarinic, is they're G protein coupled receptors. Some people call them GCPRs, and they activate second messages system like cyclic AMP and things like that. Also, nicotinic is ligand gated, if that's something you want to know. So mechanisms of actions with the nicotinic and the muscarinic receptors. Pretty much with the N2 receptor, acetylcholine binds, action potential is like sodium channels open, action potential is created. That's pretty much what happens. And then either acetylcholine, norepinephrine, or something, like I explained just literally 10 seconds ago. Muscarinic binds to the receptor, or like acetylcholine binds to the muscarinic receptor, and then activates G protein, which then also activates a specific intracellular like signaling pathway. But if we look at M1, M2, and M3, they go to different things. So like M1, M2, and 3 will increase in intracellular calcium. This will lead to smooth muscle contraction, glandular secretion. Like I said, like glands, tissue, and stuff, and cellular responses. M2 will do like an inhibition, actually, of adenyl cyclase. This decreases heart rate and does other things. But now I'm going to talk. You're like, that's only like beta, or that was only muscarinic and nicotinic. Yeah, because that was only cholinergic. Now we're going to talk about adrenergic. You could say it however you want. Adrenergic receptors. So these ones are alpha and beta, right? So we have alpha 1, like I explained. We draw like this: alpha 1, alpha 2, and we had beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3, I guess. I don't know why I did that, but these are adrenergic receptors. So alpha 1 is found in smooth muscle of blood vessels, right? So vasoconstriction, vasodilation, and the iris of the eye also dilation, constriction. Alpha 2, on the other hand, is found in like presynaptic nerve terminals, platelets, smooth muscle of blood vessels as well. But this one kind of inhibits neurotransmitter release, platelet, and vasoconstriction. So as you can tell, like with different medications and things, some things will be alpha 1 blockers, some will be alpha 1. Like there's a lot of different things. So now we'll talk about betas. This video is very rushed through everything. Beta 1 is found in like the heart and the kidney. It will affect like an increase in heart rate. Like if it gets affected, it will increase heart rate. It will and then like the kidney will release renin. Beta 2 is also found in the smooth muscle of the bronchi, right, in the lungs. So that's a very big thing when it comes to breathing and things. So yeah, beta 3 is also like found in adipose tissue. There's like you could just look it up on Google what these things do. There's so many different things, but the mechanism of action is probably one of the more important things that I need to discuss. And so with the adrenergic receptors, it activates the G protein, and then it activates intracellular signaling pathways like cyclic AMP, the DAG pathway, which I'll explain in a later video. This will lead to different cellular responses. Remember, like this goes to the lungs, right? The muscles on the bronchi. So dependent on the receptors. But if you really want just like a simple way to think about it, you could just think about this. Heart is beta 2, or sorry, beta 1. And then we have lungs, beta 2. And then we have sweat glands, is M1. And then we have blood vessels, is M1, or L1. I think this is probably the better way to think everything, because you can just rewind my video over and over again and see my robotic voice just talk about like random crap. But yeah, this was the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. This is what goes on within our bodies all the time. So I hope that made sense. If not, comment below, and maybe I'll do a live stream or something and explain everything better. But see you next time.